Hey, welcome back to the Ping Pong Flick Show. My name is Chris Wong. Before I get into the main topic, which is this thumbnail, I want to talk about this, the Hollywood Reporter article that came out, and it's about the Flash movie writer Dan Mazu, and it's mostly about tackling Ernie Klein's Armada. Now, Ernie Klein, I believe, is the person who wrote Ready Player One, so that's kind of cool. I'm really looking forward to another sci-fi movie revolving around the person who created Ready Player One, and it's called Armada. I don't know anything about that, but deep within this article by Boris Kitt, he put something out that made people scratching their heads, and this is the part in the article that he was talking about. Mazo, I can't, whatever, worked on 2012's Wrath of the Titans and penned scripts that have their feet in the fanboy world. He worked on the Warner Brothers Flash movie project when it was titled Flashpoint, as well as Johnny Quest based on the cartoon series. Okay, so out of from that, he worked on Warner Brothers' Flash movie project when it was titled Flashpoint. Yes. So, he was also one of the writers. I guess I thought it was King Arthur's scribe Joe B. Harold. I don't know what this means. I don't know if he's still writing it. I gotta look, but that's quite interesting in itself. And people caught that. People caught that reference, and they started to ask. They asked him the question, "What do you mean by that? And what does he mean when it was titled Flashpoint? Isn't it still titled Flashpoint?" But according to Boris Kidd, he says this: "I didn't say they weren't adapting Flashpoint. All I said was that it wouldn't be titled Flashpoint, but maybe I've said too much." So I've kind of known a while ago. I figured or felt that they should have just made a Flash movie without going to Flashpoint. Flashpoint is a big story. It's an important story. And judging from the direction that DCU is headed for more hope and optimism, as how Jeff Johns is putting it, Flashpoint would not be acceptable to the people who didn't like Batman v Superman, who didn't like Man of Steel. They're rooting for that hope and optimism. They want that DC's version of the MCU films, and so Flashpoint would kind of contradict that unless it was going to be a light Flashpoint. So I really thought, and for the people who work, John Francis Daly, these guys who made Game Night, they seem to, not sure, I mean, I don't know them personally, and I haven't watched any of the films besides Vacation, that they, and Spider-Man Homecoming, that maybe a simpler story would be around what they're going for, not a event film like Flashpoint's an event film. It's got Justice League members all over the place, and they're doing a more mature things, I'd like to say, and more along the things that Zack Snyder would do, a story about that type of epic proportions. And so I think Flash is what they're actually really doing, and which is a shame, because I really want to see a Flashpoint done right. But I'm okay to have Flashpoint come a little later when people are more acceptable to the DCU again, and want to see what Flash does by especially these two directors. I personally believe Zack Snyder would be perfect for Flashpoint. That's his line, that's his movie. But if it's not, Flash would be okay. But it's saying, he didn't say they weren't adapting Flashpoint. It says that they wouldn't be titled Flashpoint. So I don't know what that actually means. Are they making a Justice League movie now? I mean, it didn't say it's going to be a Flash. He says Flash movie, so it's just going to be called Flash. So it won't have the Justice League members, or they're just doing bits and pieces, kind of like how they called the TV show The Flash, and they had that episode where they called Flashpoint, but it really wasn't Flashpoint. It wasn't the Flashpoint we know full and well from the comics. It wasn't Flashpoint Paradise from the Justice League Animated. It was just pretty much Flash, and he just goes through another dimension and stuff like that. So, is that what's happening here? Is that what they're doing? They're not actually making the Flashpoint, but they're taking elements of that and making their own movie, kind of like how Civil War, although Civil War was called Civil War, but Civil War adapted just the idea of Civil War, but not exactly, and maybe some frame shots, but not exactly the Civil War we know from the Marvel comic series. So I mean, I think it's like that. It's a lighter based Flashpoint, which is a shame. I hope somewhere down the line they could actually make an actual Flashpoint movie that is more along the lines of how mature and epic and awesome Flashpoint was. But I understand that not all things that are in the comics can be translated to film right and correctly. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm very interested to see any updates on this. Anybody from Warner Brothers could come out and say what's going on here. If Walter Hamada is saying, you know what's too early for Flashpoint, let's just make a Flash movie and stuff like that. Or is Flashpoint part of the timeline that Zack Snyder had originally done, like I said, Plan B or Plan A or Plan B, what it originally was, and now they're going in a different direction. I have no idea. But on to more other things. On to Zack Snyder. What started all this was Zack Snyder's movies, right? He did Man of Steel, he did Batman v Superman, he did parts of Justice League where he was intentionally in Justice League. So it's plain as day that, especially in Man of Steel, where you can see the similarities between the Bible and Jesus Christ and Superman. You know, that Jesus reference is there. He puts his hand out. He does those, things like that. So it's definitely there on screen, and you see more of it in Batman v Superman, right? You see, and like there's more to it than I could interpret it. You see the paintings, you see the murals, you see all that. And I'm talking about gods and the spear and there's a lot of references, but apparently there's more that I even missed, and that's so cool. That's so cool because here, I'll share you one here. Is that now Heroic Hollywood put this out, but I actually saw it before Heroic Hollywood did. But he references the book of the Revelation. So someone, I forgot who did, but on Vero had posted this as one interesting motif in BVS is the motif of horses as a symbol of death. A riderless horse appears at the Black Zero event after the African incident, after the Capitol bombing, and after Superman's death. Lex also mentions horses to Senator Finch and has a horse on his death. Pa Kent mentions the horses on the Lang farm drowning. I also think horses are a symbol of the loss of control, as in all but one of the above situations occurred when a crisis spiraled out of control, resulting in the deaths of many. The horses in those cases are lost, scared, and in pain. The only time the horses are at peace are after Superman's death, and that could be because Superman chose to sacrifice himself. He took control and initiative of the situation. He was in control. Now, this is Zack Snyder responded in that Vero post, and he said this. Revelation 6:8, and I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death. And hell followed with him. Also in both funerals, the official and unofficial horses led the way. So yes, I did not know that. I knew there was a lot of horses in the movie, but I didn't get that comparison, and now it makes total sense why there's so many horses, especially that it was really there. I mean, that one horse that was at the beginning when the building came down and Bruce Wayne was going through and that one horse walked, I'm like, that's got to mean something. So, and then now I remember going back and there were a lot of horses in that movie, but it's great to see that there was an actual meaning to it, and that is just what is great about what Zack Snyder does, is that he doesn't just tell a story for the sake of telling a story. He uses references, symbolism, and every shot it means something. There's something much more to that shot. And in terms of what Chris Terrio wrote as well, the things that Chris Terrio wrote means something. It sticks together. There's a lot of different references, symbolism in the way, and that is fantastic, and people were just finding out about this stuff, right? And when they put that, Heroic Hollywood had to put this as, apparently Batman v Superman had hidden allusion to the Book of Revelation. And you know what? Zack Snyder was like, no SHIT, he pretty much said that. Well, not in those types of words, but he did kind of reference that. And in a post where Fiona did on Vero, she posted that article, and Zack Snyder said this. He said this, come on, this is day one level of caring. People who say this is reaching are not aware of truly obscure references. This is fairly straightforward. He's just letting him have it now. He is not caring anymore. Apparently, he's gonna do it. He's gonna tell them how it is, and that's just fantastic. I think not that he's letting have it, but that he's bringing out. This movie 2 years old is still making such breaking news. It's people are still writing about it. He posts something, they're talking about it, and we're more aware of what he was trying to accomplish. Even for people who can't see it, they're being more aware of it, hopefully, or calling us crazy, whatever that case may be. But it is very good. It's very intriguing. He even posted this picture about the spear. They were talking about the spear. Why does Batman have a spear? Why do of all the technology he has, why does he use a spear? Well, he posts this picture, and it's there. It's right there. With all the technology at his disposal would Batman build a spear? Here's why, and he put that picture up. Okay, exactly what it says. This is day one kind of stuff, and even more stuff. He is very active now with us on Vero. Shiraz Ferrucci from Comic Book Debate, posted this on Vero. He puts the allegory that most identify with is that Bruce represents Alexander, the Gordian Knot, being the avatar of Superman that Bruce fears. The kryptonite spear is the sword of Alexander, but it failed to kill Superman. Instead, it is interesting that Clark was the one to use the sword of Alexander, the spear, to cut the Gordian Knot, which is Doomsday. The two people who show the signs of an Lex Xander complex, Bruce Wayne and Lex Luthor, both try to cut their Gordian Knot, Superman, but it is Superman who actually succeeds in using the sword to not only cut his Gordian Knot, which is Doomsday, but also sacrifice himself in the process. Bruce tells Diana it's a fake. The sword that was built with Lex's discovery of kryptonite and Bruce's resources did not cut their Gordian Knot. The real one could be Doomsday's bone, which ended up cutting their knot, Superman. Zack Snyder had replied to that as well. He says, that all good, and Chris Terrio's a big fan of the Gordian Knot symbolism, as am I. We often talked about how to layer it with the Spear of Destiny, the Holy Lance symbolism as well. So as you see, he tried to add that in as well. So even that little scene of where Wonder Woman's talking about the sword being fake and the sword of Alexander, it's all embedded in there. That's crazy. That's crazy later. How did he do that? Just processing all that and making a coherent story at that, but there's so many different symbols and references to get you the feeling of knowing of that. I mean I've seen the omens with about Excalibur being the poster and says coming soon and things like that. I've seen those references, but it goes even deeper than this. This is amazing stuff. It's amazing stuff to hear, to listen to read about. That all this is there's more layers and layers to pull back on. And yes, a lot of those are like day one level of caring. The horses I didn't know, but that is still amazing in itself. And I think, to my point, is that what Zack Snyder done here is very masterful in its case of being, it's, dare I say, biblical. It's epic, it's philosophical. He puts every care into that work piece. And I think the fault of why a lot of people don't care for it too much, don't thinks it's reaching, is because they were searching for a simpler story. I think when Batman v Superman, when the idea of Batman versus Superman came out long time ago, well, not long time ago, Wolfgang Petersen had created a story. They wanted to make Batman and Superman meet, so they was going to do Batman, that's what it's called, is Batman versus Superman. So when Man of Steel came out, and this is just my own speculation and anything, but it makes sense in my head, that when Man of Steel came out and they finally got Superman off the ground, and then Zack Snyder put out the idea that maybe Batman brings the kryptonite, and that's how they get kryptonite into the thing. So, how that transpired, and that went, and then the idea of having Batman in a Superman sequel came up. That's how it came up, and David Goyer was involved, and then he even said at the Comic-Con, what are they going to call this? And he says, I don't know. We could call it Batman versus Superman or Superman versus Batman. We're playing around with that. And I gotta think the studio wanted that title. They wanted to call Batman versus Superman because it's a catchy title. Tells you plainly what it is. It tells all the simpletons in the crowd, the general audience, the mainstream audience, that you're gonna go see a giant fight movie involving Batman fighting Superman. And I think that was the marketing downfall for the movie. Now, if someone could ask Zack Snyder if he really intended the movie to be called Batman v Superman, or actually Batman versus Superman, is that what the title he thought of? I like to wonder. I'm just wondering if he had thought about a different title, like say Man of Steel, The Dark Knight Begins, or The Dark Knight Returns. Something along those lines, where it had Superman in it as the Man of Steel, but it wasn't a blatant versus movie sound. It's just not like Freddy versus Jason, Aliens versus Predator. It seems such a cheap title, something a studio would use to sell tickets, and a circus title, if you will. And I would love to wonder if what he had originally intended for that, because yeah, the studio's going to say, let's call it Batman versus Superman. That's more epic. That's going to be, a fight movie. We're going to have marketed who will win. The expectations for a Batman versus Superman movie, mainstream audiences would connect to that. There's nothing artsy about that. It's a standard comic book superhero fight movie. So, and then I like to think Zack Snyder tried to push for something different. He's like, well, let's I don't. It's not really a fight movie, as you know. It's more a fight of ideas. There's a lot of different layers, and this movie could be about a lot of things. But it's very far from just a plain old fight movie. They had a fight in there, sure. But I think that's why he says he compromised a little bit, but he says, I'll tell you what, how about we call it Batman v Superman? That's catchy. It doesn't have that double S on it, and it explains, at least in a way he's trying to explain to the mainstream audience. Of course, the mainstream audience don't get that. They still call it versus, that Batman v Superman is more of their not a fight, a physical fight, but more their fight of their ideas, a fight in a way, kind of like how in the court, where it's something v something, they're opposing each other, sides are opposing each other. So and it's not the intentionally idea of the movie. So he was able to get that started. He was able to take the S out, but I think it was a little too late. People were already calling this Batman versus Superman, Superman versus Batman. It's a versus movie. It's a fight movie, and that would have been problematic. I mean, what if he had changed the title? Can you think? Can you see that? Like if he had somehow was able to get his idea of what he wanted as he intended the title, unless he really intended to call it Batman v Superman, let me know. But what if the title was different? What if it was like Man of Steel: The Dark Knight Returns? Then that says everything about this movie. It's a continuation of Man of Steel, and there's going to be a Dark Knight in it. Are they going to fight? We won't know. We're not expecting that. We won't be expecting them to fight. Maybe they'll have some aggression to it, sure. The second part, Dawn of Justice, is exactly that. It's the dawn of justice. It's the dawn of them working. It already tells you that they're going to work together. So people are not expecting, well, who will win? Who will lose? So that the Batman v Superman, even though I accept it as a great title now, but for people, for the mainstream, the general audience who dislike the movie, I'm wondering if they had a different title from the beginning. Would they have walked in expecting just a standard fight movie, or would they be willing to be open-minded to the material that is presented to them, to the ideas that is presented to them? And I don't know if it would. I don't wonder. I don't. It could. The outcome could probably be the same, but I would like to think that the outcome would have been different, and maybe less controversial at that. Even though Man of Steel in itself was also controversial, but I think it would have been different. I personally think it would have been a change, and it would have been totally different. I know of people who were expecting a fight movie, didn't get what they want, didn't like it. I know Warner Brothers is a giant studio. They want to turn a $200 and $250 million budget movie into a theatrical blockbuster Marvel type $1 billion franchise. But what Zack Snyder, he's an auteur, and he created almost like an art house film. He created a film how like we have films like Blade Runner 2049. You know, it's beautiful visually. I mean, come on, Roger Deakins, and or Annihilation. You know, these are deep, thoughtful movies. But the studio, when they did the trailers and stuff, they marketed it as something more blockbustery, more, I don't want to say Michael Bay, but more something else, something altogether. Even though, well, actually, you know what? The Blade Runner 2049 was marketed as something very artistic and appeal. So maybe that should be how it is. But what I don't understand is how critics love those and not love Batman v Superman, but that's a conversation altogether. Is that this to me, and to a lot of others, it transcends the comic book genre, right? It's not just a standard superhero comic book movie. It's got lots of layers. It's deeply layered. It's got references. It's got symbolism. It's about a lot of things. There's not just one plot point in there. There's a lot of different plots. There's a lot of different moving parts for it, but it's carefully crafted, carefully connected, and by the time the Senate blows up, it just makes total sense. It's like it all comes together, especially Ultimate Edition one that I fully recommend you watch, more than theatrical, but it fully comes together, and it transcends this genre in ways that the mainstream audience and a lot of critics who went in looking at the title and expecting just a generic fight movie and having a good time, a lot of laughs, didn't get that because they were already expecting that, right? And that could have been its downfall. But instead of praising the movie or actually looking deeper into the movie, they're stuck at that top layer because of their expectations going in. And then once they've hated on it, once they've stepped onto that bandwagon, that negative bandwagon, they can't get off. It's all of a sudden cool to dislike this movie. It's all of a sudden cool to who hate on people who like it. It's all of a sudden cool to do that. And that's them. I mean, and I don't know who to blame for that. I guess Warner Brothers. If Warner Brothers had let Zack Snyder do whatever he wanted, and not bringing back that Wolfgang Peterson expectation of the film called Batman versus Superman, I think this would have been totally different. And that first trailer was indicative of that. That first trailer that came out that we all went to watch in the IMAX theaters was indicative of that. It was not just a fight movie. It had a building up to it, but there was something more to it. The ideas they represented, the monologues of the different characters, should there be a Superman, and they had that in there. Neil deGrasse Tyson, they had the Senator, all that monologue at the beginning of that trailer where it zooms into a statue. That was beautifully crafted. It gave you the idea of the film beyond a simple fight movie. But then later on, they started marketing, it's just a simple fight movie, man. And guess what? We got Doomsday in it, man. Look at this. It's a superhero movie. And it was more than that. It was a lot more than that. And I like to think that the title is different. Dawn of Justice could have been the title. It could have been Man of Steel, Dawn of Justice. And that would have been a simpler title. Yes, it's not as catchy as Batman v Superman, but it would have been more representative of the final product. And I want to believe, and I don't know, if Fiona, if you're watching, if one of you guys are watching, please ask Zack Snyder what his intended title might have been. I mean, he's still in Warner Brothers' lot, so he can't say much. But hopefully he could say something like, it was called this, Hashtag until it wasn't, or something. I don't know. But that's what my take on it, as well as long as lines that I've never come across in a comic book superhero movie since Watchmen to ever reach this layer of depth. Black Panther almost went there with its symbolism of how our government is now in border walls and stuff like that, the segregation, or actually the differences between African American and Africans and stuff like that. But it kind of went there and then it didn't. But it's the most they've tried. The most they've tried doing that. And I even argue Guardians of the Galaxy 2 about fatherly figures and stuff and about family. But in any case, Batman v Superman is still being talked to today and being talked at great lengths, of being picked up by the media bloggers and such. That is quite cool, quite apparent. It's great that Zack Snyder is coming out, spilling more about his ideas for the film, opening up this, letting people see, the depths of this iceberg, and not just looking above the water, but trying to get them to look under the water. Whether they look at it or not, we don't know. I don't know. I feel this is a cult classic already. It's already a cult classic. They're calling us a cult. It is a classic to us, so I think it is a cult classic. But for the mainstream audiences, I don't know if they'll ever appreciate it ever again, or if it'll come out one day and be talked about in art classes or such. But it's great, it's fantastic, and this movie just is transcends what everything that we've ever comprehend in terms of general, standard comic book superhero genre affair. You just have to look a little harder at it. All right, guys, thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.